Emma Rodriguez walked into the busy restaurant where she worked as a waitress, tying her black apron around her waist as she prepared for another long shift. The lunch rush at Marino's Italian Bistro was always hectic, but the tips were good enough to help her pay for nursing school. She had been working there for 8 months, saving every dollar she could while pursuing her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse. As she approached the hostess station to check her assigned tables, Emma noticed a group of well-dressed women in their 40s seated at table 12. They were clearly having some kind of celebration, with champagne glasses and an expensive-looking cake on the table. Their designer handbags and jewelry suggested they were wealthy, probably celebrating a birthday or business success. Emma grabbed her notepad and headed over to introduce herself. As she walked across the dining room, she unconsciously adjusted her sleeves, making sure they covered the small tattoo on her left wrist. The delicate wing design was barely visible, but she had learned to be careful about showing it at work after receiving judgmental comments from customers in the past. "Good afternoon, ladies," Emma said with her brightest smile as she approached the table. "My name is Emma and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with some appetizers or maybe some more champagne?" The woman at the head of the table, a blonde with perfectly styled hair and an expensive silk blouse, looked Emma up and down with obvious disapproval. Her name was Victoria Caldwell, and she owned 3 successful boutiques in the upscale part of town. She was used to getting exactly what she wanted, exactly when she wanted it. "Actually," Victoria said in a condescending tone, "we were hoping for a more experienced server. This is a very important business celebration and we need someone who understands fine dining service." Emma maintained her professional smile despite the slight. "I've been working here for 8 months and I'm very familiar with our menu and wine selection. I'd be happy to make recommendations based on your preferences." The other women at the table exchanged glances, clearly following Victoria's lead in their assessment of Emma. One of them, a redhead named Melissa who worked as a real estate agent, decided to join in the criticism. "8 months isn't very long," Melissa said with a laugh. "We're trying to impress some potential business partners here. Maybe you could ask the manager to give us someone with more experience." Emma felt her cheeks burning but kept her voice steady. "I understand you want excellent service, and I can absolutely provide that. Our manager is quite busy right now, but I'm confident I can take great care of you." As Emma reached across the table to fill their water glasses, her sleeve rode up slightly, revealing just the edge of her wing tattoo. Victoria's sharp eyes immediately caught sight of it, and her expression shifted from mere snobbery to outright disgust. "Oh my goodness," Victoria announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Look at this. Our waitress has a tattoo. How unprofessional can you get?" The other women craned their necks to see what Victoria was talking about, and Emma quickly pulled her sleeve down. But it was too late. The damage was done, and she could feel the attention of other diners turning toward their table. "It's just a small design," Emma said quietly, hoping to diffuse the situation. "It doesn't affect my ability to serve you." But Victoria was just getting started. She had always believed that people with tattoos were irresponsible and unprofessional, and she wasn't about to let this opportunity to express her opinions pass by. "A small design," Victoria repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Honey, any tattoo shows poor judgment and lack of foresight. What were you thinking when you decided to permanently mark yourself like that?" Melissa joined in with enthusiasm, clearly enjoying the opportunity to feel superior. "I agree completely. It's so trashy and unprofessional. How can a restaurant allow servers with visible tattoos to work here? It completely ruins the ambiance." A third woman at the table, brunette named Janet who worked in marketing, decided to add her own commentary. "It's probably some meaningless design she picked off a wall at some sketchy tattoo parlor. These young people today think tattoos make them look cool or edgy, but they just look cheap." Emma stood frozen beside their table as the women continued their verbal assault. Other customers were now openly staring, and she could feel her confidence crumbling with each cruel comment. She had encountered rude customers before, but never such a coordinated attack on something so personal. "Let me guess," Victoria continued, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "It's supposed to represent freedom or your dreams or some other cliché nonsense that every teenage girl thinks is deep and meaningful." The women laughed at Victoria's comment, and Emma felt tears threatening to spill over. She thought about the real reason she had gotten the tattoo. about the brother she had lost and the promise she had made to herself to honor his memory. These women had no idea what they were talking about, but she couldn't bring herself to explain something so personal to people who were treating her with such cruelty. You know what the worst part is? Melissa added, warming to the topic. She probably thinks it makes her look tough or interesting, but all it really shows is that she makes impulsive decisions without thinking about the consequences. Janet nodded in agreement. Exactly. And now she's stuck with it forever. What's she gonna do when she's 50 and that little wing looks ridiculous on her wrinkled skin? The mockery continued as more diners turned to watch the spectacle. Emma felt completely helpless, trapped between her need to maintain professionalism for her job and her desire to defend herself against these cruel strangers who felt entitled to judge her most personal choices. Victoria leaned back in her chair with satisfaction, enjoying the power she felt over the young waitress. I think we definitely need to speak to the manager about the dress code here. Visible tattoos are completely inappropriate for a restaurant of this caliber. Emma's hands were shaking as she tried to maintain her composure. She needed this job desperately, and she couldn't afford to lose her temper or walk away no matter how badly these women were treating her. The money from her shifts at Marino's was the only thing allowing her to continue her nursing education. I apologize if my appearance is offensive to you, Emma managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Would you like me to find another server to take care of your table? Oh, I think the damage is already done, Victoria replied with mock concern. The whole atmosphere has been ruined by this unprofessional display. How are we supposed to enjoy our celebration now? The harassment continued for several more minutes as Victoria and her friends seemed to be enjoying themselves at Emma's expense. Other customers in the restaurant had stopped their own conversations to watch the drama unfolding, some looking uncomfortable with the women's behavior, while others seemed entertained by the spectacle. Emma was about to excuse herself to find the manager when she noticed a man at a corner table stand up and begin walking toward them. He was tall and muscular with short-cropped hair and an unmistakable military bearing. Even in civilian clothes, everything about his posture and movement suggested years of disciplined training. Commander Rick Sullivan had been enjoying a quiet lunch alone, reading reports on his tablet while eating a sandwich. He was on shore leave after 6 months deployed overseas with his SEAL team, and he had been looking forward to some peaceful time away from the intensity of military operations. But the loud voices and cruel laughter from the nearby table had drawn his attention. At first, he had tried to ignore the commotion and focus on his meal, but as he listened to the women's commentary about the young waitress's tattoo, something about their words caught his attention. He had caught a glimpse of the design on the server's wrist, and his trained eye recognized details that the mocking customers had completely missed. As Commander Sullivan approached the table, the conversation gradually died down. His presence commanded attention without him having to say a word. Victoria looked up at him with curiosity, assuming he was perhaps coming over to compliment her on her outfit or ask for her business card. Excuse me, ladies, Commander Sullivan said in a calm but authoritative voice. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about this young woman's tattoo. Victoria smiled, thinking she had found an ally in her criticism. Oh, you noticed it too? Isn't it just completely inappropriate for someone in the service industry? We were just explaining to her how unprofessional it looks. Commander Sullivan's expression remained neutral as he looked directly at Emma. Miss, would you mind if I took a closer look at that tattoo you're wearing? Emma hesitated, glancing nervously between the commander and the table of women who had been tormenting her. She wasn't sure what this stranger wanted, but his respectful tone was such a contrast to the cruelty she had been enduring that she found herself nodding. It's okay, she said quietly, rolling up her sleeve to reveal the small wing design on her wrist. Commander Sullivan leaned in slightly to examine the tattoo more closely, and his expression immediately changed. What he saw wasn't the meaningless decoration that Victoria and her friends had dismissed. The wings were precisely detailed naval aircrew wings, complete with the distinctive anchor and eagle design that marked them as military insignia. These are NAC wings, he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. Naval aircrewman wings. Victoria looked confused by his comment. What does that mean? It's just some random wing design, isn't it? Commander Sullivan straightened up and fixed Victoria with a steady gaze that made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. No, ma'am, it's not random at all. These are very specific military wings that represent specialized training and service in naval aviation operations. The mockery in Victoria's voice faltered slightly. Military wings? But she's just a waitress. That's exactly the point, Commander Sullivan replied, his voice taking on an edge that suggested he was not pleased with what he had witnessed. You've spent the last 10 minutes mocking something you clearly don't understand. Emma watched the exchange with growing amazement. No one had ever recognized her tattoo for what it really represented. Most people, like Victoria and her friends, saw it as just another trendy design that young people chose without thinking. Melissa tried to regain some of the group's earlier confidence. Well, even if it is military-related, she's still just a restaurant server. It's not like she earned those wings herself. Commander Sullivan's expression grew even more serious. You're right that she didn't earn them herself. These wings typically represent someone else's service and sacrifice. Someone who meant enough to her that she chose to carry their memory permanently. The women at the table were beginning to look less certain of themselves, but Victoria wasn't ready to back down completely. Even so, tattoos are still unprofessional in a service environment. We have every right to expect certain standards. You have a right to expect good service, Commander Sullivan agreed. But you don't have a right to publicly humiliate someone because of your own ignorance and prejudices. The restaurant had grown noticeably quieter, as other diners sensed the tension at the table. Emma could see the manager, Mr. Caruso, watching the situation from across the room, clearly uncertain whether he should intervene. Commander Sullivan turned his attention back to Emma. Miss, those wings you're wearing, they belonged to someone important to you, didn't they? Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes as she nodded. My older brother, David. He was a naval air crewman on search and rescue operations. He died in a helicopter crash during a training exercise 2 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face went pale as she realized the magnitude of her mistake, while Melissa and Janet looked like they wanted to disappear entirely. The other restaurant patrons who had been enjoying the earlier drama now looked deeply uncomfortable. Commander Sullivan's voice softened considerably. I'm sorry for your loss. Search and rescue air crewmen save countless lives. Your brother's service was vital and honorable. Thank you, Emma whispered, wiping away a tear. He always said he wanted to help people, to make a difference. That's why I'm studying to be a nurse. I want to continue his legacy of helping others. Victoria finally found her voice, though it was much quieter than before. I had no idea. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. But Commander Sullivan wasn't finished addressing the table. You spent 15 minutes tearing down this young woman without knowing anything about her story. You made assumptions about her character, her judgment, and her professionalism based on a piece of art that honors a fallen hero. The weight of his words settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Melissa was staring at her hands while Janet had gone completely silent. Victoria looked like she was struggling with how to respond to the revelation. Your brother earned those wings through months of intensive training, Commander Sullivan continued, speaking to Emma, but ensuring the other women could hear every word. Naval aircrew training is one of the most demanding programs in the military. The dropout rate is extremely high because not everyone has what it takes to handle the responsibility of saving lives in dangerous conditions. Emma nodded, remembering how proud David had been when he finally received his wings after completing the grueling program. He had called her the moment the ceremony ended, so excited he could barely contain himself. He was so proud of those wings, Emma said, her voice stronger now. He said they represented everything he had worked for, everything he believed in. When he died, I couldn't bear the thought of his wings just sitting in a box somewhere. Forgotten. Commander Sullivan looked around the table at the 3 women who had been so confident in their mockery just minutes before. This young woman is carrying her brother's legacy with her every day. She's honoring a naval air crewman who died serving his country, and you turned that into entertainment. The atmosphere in the restaurant had become thick with tension and shame as Commander Sullivan's words sank in. Victoria, who had been so confident and cruel just minutes before, now looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. The reality of what she had done was hitting her with full force. Commander Sullivan wasn't finished. He stood at attention and rendered a crisp military salute in Emma's direction, his voice carrying across the silent dining room. Miss Rodriguez, I salute the memory of Naval Air Crewman David Rodriguez and the sacrifice your family has made for this country. Emma burst into tears at the unexpected honor. No one had ever acknowledged her brother's service in such a formal, respectful way. The contrast between the mockery she had endured just moments before and this dignified recognition was overwhelming. "Thank you, sir," she managed to say through her tears. "David would have been so honored by your salute." The other diners in the restaurant had witnessed the entire transformation, and many were now looking at Victoria and her friends with obvious disapproval. The women who had seemed so sophisticated and superior earlier now appeared small and petty in comparison to the grace being shown by both Emma and the commander. Victoria finally found the courage to speak, her voice shaking with emotion. "Miss Rodriguez, I owe you the most sincere apology of my life. There is no excuse for how I treated you. Your brother was a hero, and I mocked his memory out of pure ignorance and cruelty." Melissa and Janet quickly added their own apologies, both looking genuinely ashamed of their behavior. "We're so sorry," Melissa said. "We had no right to judge you or make assumptions about your tattoo." "I feel sick about what we did," Janet added. "Your brother died serving our country, and we turned his wings into something to laugh at." Commander Sullivan observed their apologies with a measured expression. "Being sorry is a start, but it's important to understand why this happened in the first place. You all made immediate judgments about Emma based on your own prejudices and assumptions." Emma wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Despite everything they had put her through, she found herself feeling sorry for the three women. They looked genuinely horrified by what they had done. "I accept your apologies," Emma said quietly, "but I hope you'll remember this experience the next time you feel tempted to judge someone based on their appearance." Victoria nodded vigorously. "Absolutely. This has been a wake-up call for me about my own attitudes and assumptions." Commander Sullivan turned to address the broader restaurant, his voice carrying clearly across the dining room. "What happened here today is a perfect example of why we should never assume we know someone's story based on a quick glance. This young woman is honoring her brother's military service while working to put herself through nursing school. She deserves respect, not mockery." Mr. Caruso, the restaurant manager, finally approached the table. He had been watching the entire situation unfold and wasn't sure how to handle it. "Is everything all right here? Emma, are you okay?" "Everything's fine now, Mr. Caruso," Emma replied. "This gentleman helped clear up a misunderstanding." Commander Sullivan extended his hand to the manager. "Commander Rick Sullivan, United States Navy. Your employee here has shown tremendous professionalism and grace under very difficult circumstances. You should be proud to have her on your staff." Mr. Caruso shook the commander's hand with obvious respect. "Thank you, Commander. Emma is one of our best employees. We're lucky to have her." Victoria suddenly had an idea. "Mr. Caruso, we would like to leave a very substantial tip for Emma's excellent service today. And we'd also like to make a donation to whatever charity supports military families in honor of her brother's memory." Commander Sullivan nodded approvingly. "That's a meaningful gesture. There are several organizations that support Gold Star families and fallen service members." Emma was touched by the offer. "There's a foundation called Wings of Honor that helped my family after David's accident. They provide financial assistance and emotional support to families who have lost service members." "Perfect," Victoria said, pulling out her checkbook. "I'd like to make a significant donation to Wings of Honor in David's name." Melissa and Janet quickly agreed to contribute as well. What had started as a cruel attack on Emma had transformed into an outpouring of support and generosity. Commander Sullivan watched the interaction with satisfaction. This is exactly the kind of positive action that honors fallen service members. David would be proud to know his memory inspired others to help military families. As the women wrote out their checks, other diners began approaching Emma to express their own support and admiration. Several offered to add their own donations to the growing fund for Wings of Honor. An elderly man who had been eating lunch with his wife came over to shake Emma's hand. "Young lady, I'm a Korean War veteran and I want you to know how much I respect what you're doing to honor your brother." A young mother with 2 children stopped by the table as well. "I just want to say that your brother's sacrifice means everything to families like mine. Thank you for keeping his memory alive." Commander Sullivan pulled out his wallet and added his own substantial tip to the growing pile of money on the table. "Emma, your brother's service deserves recognition, and your commitment to honoring his memory while pursuing your own goals is admirable." Victoria looked around at the crowd that had gathered to support Emma. "I can't believe I almost destroyed something so beautiful and meaningful." Thank you, Commander, for opening my eyes to what was really happening here. The important thing is that you learned from it, Commander Sullivan replied, and that you're taking action to make amends. Emma was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from strangers who had witnessed her humiliation and redemption. I can't believe how this day has turned around. When I came to work this morning, I never could have imagined anything like this would happen. Commander Sullivan checked his watch. I need to get going, but Emma, I want you to know that your brother's wingman spirit lives on through you. The way you handled this situation with grace and dignity shows the same character that made him a hero. Thank you so much, Commander, Emma said, shaking his hand. You've given me something I'll treasure forever. As Commander Sullivan prepared to leave, Victoria stood up. Commander, thank you for preventing us from making an even bigger mistake. You've taught us all a valuable lesson about respect and understanding. Just remember it, he replied simply, and treat the next person you meet with the kindness and respect you'd want for yourself. After Commander Sullivan left the restaurant, the atmosphere remained charged with emotion and reflection. The three women sat quietly at their table, the celebration they had originally planned, completely forgotten in the wake of their shameful behavior and subsequent enlightenment. Victoria looked at the substantial checks they had all written for Wings of Honor, then at Emma, who was still processing everything that had happened. The young waitress had shown such grace and forgiveness in the face of their cruelty, and Victoria felt compelled to do more than just write a check. Emma, Victoria said hesitantly, would you mind if I asked you about your nursing studies? I know this is personal, but after what just happened, I feel like I need to understand more about who you really are. Emma was surprised by the question, but appreciated Victoria's genuine interest. I'm in my second year of the nursing program at San Diego State. I specialize in pediatric care because my brother always said children deserved the best chance at life possible. That's incredibly noble, Melissa added softly. How do you manage to work here and go to school at the same time? It's not easy, Emma admitted. I work 3 double shifts a week here, and I have clinical rotations at the Children's Hospital twice a week. Between studying and working, I don't have much free time, but it's worth it to honor David's memory. Janet, who had been mostly quiet since the revelation about David, finally spoke up. Emma, I work in marketing for a large healthcare company. We have a scholarship program for nursing students who demonstrate exceptional character and dedication. Would you be interested in applying? Emma's eyes widened with surprise. Really? I mean, yes, absolutely. Every bit of financial help makes a huge difference. Victoria suddenly had another idea. And I own 3 boutiques in town. I know retail isn't related to nursing, but if you ever need flexible part-time work that pays better than restaurant wages, I'd love to offer you a position. The transformation was remarkable. The same women who had been so quick to judge and mock Emma based on her appearance were now offering concrete help and support. Emma felt overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. I don't know what to say, Emma said, tears forming in her eyes again. This morning I was just trying to get through another shift, and now you have people who want to support your dreams, Victoria finished. It's the least we can do after what we put you through. Mr. Caruso, who had been watching the ongoing interaction from a distance, approached the table again. Emma, if you need to take some time to process all this, I can cover your other tables. Thank you, Mr. Caruso, but I'm okay, Emma replied. Actually, I feel better than I have in months. Victoria pulled out her business card and handed it to Emma. This has my personal number on it. Please call me this week about the job opportunity, and I'm serious about the flexible scheduling. I understand that your education comes first. Melissa also handed Emma her card. I'm going to make some calls about that scholarship program. There's also a networking group for women in healthcare that I think you should join. I'll send you the information. Janet wrote her contact information on a napkin. I want to stay in touch too. What happened here today changed something in me, and I want to make sure we turn this into something positive. Emma looked at the business cards and contact information she was suddenly holding. Just an hour ago, these women had been her tormentors, and now they were offering to become her advocates and supporters. I'm still having trouble believing this is real, Emma said. When those first customers started laughing at your comments about my tattoo, I thought this was going to be one of the worst days of my life. Instead, it might be one of the most important, Victoria replied. For all of us, I learned some very uncomfortable truths about myself today. As the conversation continued, Other customers began approaching Emma to offer their own support. A businessman at a nearby table handed her his card and explained that his company provided internships for nursing students. A retired teacher offered to help with tutoring if Emma ever needed academic support. "Your brother's memory is inspiring so many people," Melissa observed. "I bet he would be amazed to see the positive impact his wings are having today." Emma touched her wrist gently, feeling the familiar outline of David's wings beneath her sleeve.
"He always said that one good deed creates ripples that spread farther than you can imagine."
I think he'd love knowing that his wings started all this kindness. The lunch rush was winding down, and Emma realized she needed to get back to her other tables. But before she could leave, Victoria had one more request. "Emma, would you mind telling us more about David? I feel like we owe it to his memory to know who he really was." Emma smiled, always happy to talk about her brother. "David was 3 years older than me, and he was my hero long before he became a real hero. When we were kids, he was always rescuing stray animals or helping elderly neighbors with their groceries. He sounds like he was special from the beginning," Janet said. "He was. When he told our parents he wanted to join the Navy and become an air crewman, they were scared but not surprised. He had always wanted to save people. He said search and rescue was the perfect job because he got to give families their loved ones back." Victoria wiped away a tear. "And now you're continuing that tradition of helping and healing people through nursing." "That's the plan," Emma said. "David always told me that the best way to honor someone's memory is to live in a way that would make them proud." "Well, you're definitely doing that," Melissa said with conviction. "The way you handled our terrible behavior showed incredible maturity and grace." As Emma finally headed back to check on her other tables, she carried with her not just the business cards and contact information, but a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The day that had started with humiliation had become something she would treasure forever. The three women remained at their table for another hour, continuing to process what had happened and discuss ways they could continue supporting Emma and other military families. Their original celebration was forgotten, replaced by something much more meaningful. "I keep thinking about what Commander Sullivan said," Victoria mused, "about how we made assumptions based on our own prejudices. I thought I was a fair-minded person, but today showed me how wrong I was." "We all have work to do," Melissa agreed, "but at least now we're aware of it and we have a chance to do better." As they finally prepared to leave, the three women made a pact to stay in touch with Emma and continue supporting her journey through nursing school. What had begun as a cruel attack on a young waitress had transformed into the beginning of lasting friendships and meaningful change. 6 months later, Emma Rodriguez walked across the stage at San Diego State University wearing her crisp white nursing uniform and cap. The scholarship from Janet's healthcare company had made it possible for her to reduce her work hours at the restaurant and focus more intensively on her studies, leading to her early graduation with highest honors. In the audience, a surprising group of supporters had gathered to cheer her on. Victoria, Melissa, and Janet sat together in the front row, beaming with pride as if Emma were their own daughter. Next to them sat Mr. Caruso from the restaurant, who had become like a father figure to Emma over the past months. As Emma received her nursing degree, she touched her wrist gently, feeling David's wings beneath the sleeve of her uniform. She knew he would have been so proud to see her achieve this milestone, and she felt his presence with her in this moment of triumph. After the ceremony, the group gathered outside the auditorium for pictures and congratulations. Victoria had brought a huge bouquet of flowers, while Melissa had organized a small celebration dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. "I still can't believe how much everything has changed since that day at Marino's," Emma said as they posed for photos. "If someone had told me that morning that you three would become some of my closest supporters, I never would have believed it." "That day changed all of us," Victoria replied, adjusting Emma's cap for another photo. "You taught us what real character looks like under pressure." Janet nodded in agreement. "And you've inspired us to be better people. I've completely changed how my company approaches diversity and inclusion because of what I learned from you." The scholarship that Janet had helped Emma obtain had covered not only tuition costs but also provided a mentorship program that connected Emma with experienced nurses in pediatric care. Through these connections, she had already secured a position at Children's Hospital of San Diego, exactly where she had always dreamed of working. "Speaking of changes," Melissa said with excitement, I have some news to share. Remember how we talked about creating a scholarship fund in David's name? Well, it's officially established now. The Wings of Honor Foundation has agreed to administer it, and we've already raised enough money to provide full scholarships for 3 nursing students from military families. Emma felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes. You named it after David? The David Rodriguez Memorial Scholarship for military family members pursuing healthcare careers, Victoria announced proudly. We wanted his name and his legacy to continue helping other people achieve their dreams. The transformation in these 3 women had been remarkable to witness. Victoria had not only offered Emma a part-time job at one of her boutiques, but had also implemented new hiring practices that focused on character and potential rather than superficial judgments. She had also become a major supporter of various military family charities. Melissa had used her real estate connections to help military families find affordable housing, and she regularly volunteered with organizations that supported veterans. Janet had revolutionized her company's scholarship program and had become an advocate for inclusive hiring practices in the healthcare industry. You know what the best part is? Emma said as they walked toward the restaurant for their celebration dinner. David's wings have touched so many lives beyond just mine. That day at the restaurant started a chain reaction of kindness and positive change. Mr. Caruso, who had been listening quietly, smiled with paternal pride. Emma, your brother would be amazed to see how his memory has inspired so many people to be better versions of themselves. As they entered the elegant restaurant for dinner, Emma couldn't help but remember that other restaurant 6 months ago where everything had changed. The contrast was striking. Instead of facing mockery and judgment, she was surrounded by people who believed in her and had actively supported her dreams. During dinner, Victoria made a special presentation. Emma, we wanted to give you something to commemorate this achievement. She handed Emma a beautifully wrapped box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant in the shape of naval aircrewman wings, identical to the tattoo on Emma's wrist but crafted in precious metal. Now you can wear David's wings in professional settings where your tattoo might need to be covered, Melissa explained. His memory can still be with you always. Emma was so moved she could barely speak. This is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received. Thank you all so much. There's one more surprise, Janet announced. Commander Sullivan is here. Emma looked around the restaurant in amazement and spotted the familiar figure of Commander Rick Sullivan approaching their table. He was in dress uniform this time, looking every bit the distinguished naval officer. Congratulations, Nurse Rodriguez, he said with a warm smile as he approached. I heard about your graduation and wanted to be here to honor your achievement. Emma stood up to shake his hand, still overwhelmed by the support she was receiving. Commander Sullivan, I can't believe you came. I wouldn't miss it, he replied. Your determination to honor your brother's memory while pursuing your own calling has been inspiring to watch. David would be incredibly proud of the nurse and the person you've become. Commander Sullivan had stayed in touch with Emma throughout her final months of nursing school, offering encouragement during difficult times and celebrating her successes along the way. He had also connected her with other military families who could benefit from her nursing skills and her understanding of their unique challenges. I have something for you as well, Commander Sullivan said, producing an official-looking document. This is a commendation from the Navy recognizing your commitment to honoring fallen service members and your dedication to serving military families through your nursing career. Emma read the commendation, with tears streaming down her face. It was an official recognition of her efforts to keep David's memory alive and her commitment to serving others in his honor. I don't deserve all this recognition, Emma said, overwhelmed by the ceremony. Yes, you do, Victoria said firmly. You've turned personal tragedy into a force for good in the world. You've inspired all of us to be better people, and you're about to start a career dedicated to helping children and families in their most vulnerable moments. The dinner continued with toasts, stories, and plans for the future. Emma learned that the scholarship fund in David's name had already received applications from dozens of military family members pursuing healthcare careers. His legacy was expanding beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. As the evening wound down, Emma reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. What had started as the worst day of her life had become the catalyst for achievements and relationships she never could have dreamed of. You know what I think David would say if he could see all this? Emma mused as they prepared to leave the restaurant. "What's that?" Commander Sullivan asked. He'd say that his wings finally learned to fly. 1 year later, Emma Rodriguez stood in the pediatric intensive care unit at Children's Hospital of San Diego, gently checking on a 6-year-old patient named Tommy, whose father was deployed overseas with the Marine Corps. It was her favorite kind of case, using her nursing skills to help a military family during a difficult time. Tommy had been in the hospital for 2 weeks recovering from a serious accident, and his mother Sarah had been by his side constantly, exhausted and worried about both her son's recovery and her husband's safety overseas. Emma had taken special care to support both mother and child, understanding the unique stresses that military families faced. "How's our brave little Marine doing today?" Emma asked softly as she adjusted Tommy's IV and checked his vital signs. "Better," Tommy replied with a weak smile. "Nurse Emma, will you show me your special wings again?" Emma smiled and pulled up her sleeve to reveal David's wings tattooed on her wrist. Tommy had been fascinated by the tattoo from the day he arrived, and Emma had explained to him that the wings represented her brother who had been a hero in the Navy. "Those wings remind me that there are people watching over us, even when we can't see them," Emma told him, just as she had every day for the past 2 weeks. Tommy's mother Sarah looked up from her chair beside the bed with gratitude in her tired eyes. "Emma, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. You've made this whole ordeal so much easier." "It's my honor," Emma replied sincerely. "Supporting military families is what I was meant to do." As Emma finished her rounds for the morning, she received a text message from Victoria asking if she was free for lunch. Over the past year, the 3 women who had once mocked her tattoo had become some of her closest friends and strongest supporters. At lunch, Victoria, Melissa, and Janet were bursting with excitement about something, though they tried to contain their enthusiasm until Emma arrived at their usual restaurant. "We have incredible news about the scholarship fund," Melissa announced as soon as Emma sat down. "The David Rodriguez Memorial Scholarship has now helped 15 students from military families pursue healthcare careers, and 3 of them have already graduated and are working in hospitals and clinics across the country." Emma felt the familiar surge of pride and emotion that came whenever she heard about David's continuing impact. 15 students? That's amazing. David's wings are creating more healers and helpers than he ever could have imagined. "There's more," Janet added with excitement. "The foundation wants to expand the program nationally. They're asking if we'd be willing to help establish David Rodriguez Memorial Scholarships at nursing schools across the country." The scope of David's growing legacy was breathtaking. What had started with a small tattoo honoring 1 fallen air crewman was now becoming a national program to support military families pursuing healthcare careers. "Of course I'd love to help," Emma said without hesitation. "David always said that helping one person was just the beginning, that kindness spreads like ripples in a pond." Victoria pulled out her tablet and showed Emma a presentation she had been working on. "I've been documenting our story, how that terrible day at the restaurant led to all these positive changes. We want to share it as an example of how people can change and grow when they're confronted with their prejudices." The presentation included photos from Emma's nursing graduation, updates on the scholarship recipients, and testimonials from the various people whose lives had been touched by David's story. It was a powerful illustration of how one moment of cruelty had been transformed into years of positive impact. "I've been invited to speak at a conference for business leaders about unconscious bias and the importance of looking beyond surface judgments," Victoria continued. "I want to tell David's story and show how my assumptions almost caused me to miss recognizing someone truly special." Melissa had her own update to share. "I've been working with the Veterans Administration to help military families find suitable housing near quality healthcare facilities. Last month alone, I helped 12 families relocate to be closer to the medical care they needed." Janet's contributions had been equally impressive. "Our company's scholarship program has completely changed because of what I learned from Emma. We now specifically seek out applicants who have overcome adversity and demonstrated character under pressure, rather than just focusing on test scores and grades." As they talked, Emma's phone buzzed with a message from Commander Sullivan. He had stayed in touch regularly, and his messages always brought news of other military families who had been inspired by David's story. "Commander, Sullivan says there's a family in Virginia whose son is applying for one of David's scholarships. Emma shared with the group. The boy lost his father in Afghanistan and wants to become a pediatric nurse to help other children dealing with trauma. David's wings keep growing their reach, Victoria observed with wonder. It's like he's still out there conducting search and rescue missions, but now he's rescuing dreams and hopes instead of people in physical danger. The lunch conversation turned to their plans for the upcoming anniversary of the day they first met at Marino's restaurant. They had decided to make it an annual celebration, not of the conflict that had occurred, but of the transformation and growth that had followed. I want to invite some of the scholarship recipients to join us this year, Emma suggested. I'd love for them to meet the people who helped make their education possible. That's a wonderful idea, Melissa agreed. And maybe we can use the anniversary as a fundraising opportunity to expand the scholarship program even further. As they prepared to leave lunch, Janet had one final surprise to share. Emma, I have something for you. She handed Emma an official-looking letter. Emma opened it to find notification that she had been selected as the recipient of the National Association of Pediatric Nurses Young Professional Excellence Award for her work with military families and her advocacy for compassionate patient care. You nominated me for this? Emma asked, looking around the table at her friends. We all did, Victoria replied, along with Commander Sullivan, Mr. Caruso, and several families you've helped at the hospital. Your work deserves recognition. Emma felt overwhelmed by the honor and by the continued support of people who had become so important to her life. David would be so proud to know that his wings led to all of this. He would be proud of you, Melissa corrected. The wings were just the beginning. Everything that followed came from your character, your determination, and your commitment to honoring his memory through service to others. As Emma returned to the hospital for her afternoon shift, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. The tattoo that had once been a source of mockery and judgment had become a symbol of hope and inspiration for military families across the country. In the pediatric ICU, Tommy was awake and playing with toy airplanes when she arrived. His mother, Sarah, was reading to him from a book about naval aviation. Nurse Emma, Tommy called out excitedly. Mom found a book about Navy rescue helicopters like your brother flew. Will you tell me more stories about him? Emma sat down beside Tommy's bed and began telling him about David's courage, his dedication to saving lives, and his belief that helping others was the most important thing a person could do. As she spoke, she touched the wings on her wrist and felt David's presence more strongly than ever. The wings that had once brought her such pain and embarrassment had become the foundation for a life of purpose and meaning. David's legacy was alive and growing, touching new lives every day through the scholarships. The changed perspectives of people like Victoria, Melissa, and Janet, and Emma's own work caring for military families in their times of greatest need. As Tommy drifted off to sleep listening to stories about naval heroes, Emma knew that David's wings would continue to inspire and protect long after she was gone. His memory had taken flight in ways neither of them could have imagined, creating a lasting legacy of service, compassion, and hope.